Hello, my name is Manuel Arca, and this is my presentation on autonomous versus human driven vehicles in regards to the recommendation report. So, this is for the course Technical Communications for Engineers, and the purpose of this presentation is to recommend an option between two, and it's basically the oral presentation of a recommendation report that has already been written. And so the topic that I chose was basically autonomous vehicles and human-driven ones. And the reason I chose this topic was because this is something that really interests me. It's considered a new technology, and many people make immediate assumptions as like, oh, autonomous vehicles are the future, or they're so good, or there's so many good things about them. But I really wanted to dig deeper and learn more. And so the purpose the purpose of this is to make a recommendation between the two options, and it's also a requirement for this course. And in regards to the scope of what this presentation will analyze, stress on drivers and safety are factors that will be considered to compare the two options. And other factors that won't be considered are environmental impact and other things such as mileage or also driver expenses. Yeah. And like I said, there are two possible options that we're comparing: autonomous vehicles and human-driven ones. Okay, so the background to this problem is that now autonomous vehicles and vehicles with autonomous features are more common than ever before. They're becoming more common. Seeing a Tesla out in the street used to be a more rare occurrence, and now it's actually fairly common. So things like that are increasing. There's different implementations to autonomous features. There are cars that are fully autonomous, but to a certain degree, cars can also be semi-autonomous or simply just give the driver the option to be somewhat autonomous at certain moments. We have to consider really which of these two options is better because there are a lot of automobilistic accidents and lives are at stake. And if we implement this new technology not knowing whether it's better or safer, well, then that would not be beneficial for the general public. So that's really the problem at hand, is deciding which two of these is really more beneficial. So let's look at criteria one. The first criteria that we'll see is stress on people when driving. So when people drive, people consider driving one of the most stressful activities that they do throughout their day, right? And even though this is the case, some people consider it inevitable. Some of the data that we found is that the UK Office of National Statistics stated that it appears that commuters have lower life satisfaction, and went on to give actual statistics about how people who reported who commuted in the mornings to their job for more than an hour, for more than 30 minutes, reported starting their day off drowsy, not being morning people, being less productive. And so this stress really does impact those who drive themselves. However, autonomous vehicles have new features, and Tesla claims that their car only requires you to sit in the driver's seat, and it can then drive itself through traffic for multiple minutes. It can cross lanes, take exits, and doesn't require a driver to constantly be watching over it. So the interpretation of this data is that the more you drive, obviously, the more you will get stressed, and it is a tiresome and affects people's day the longer they have to drive. And autonomous vehicles do not require the same amount of mental work from their drivers, resulting in them really having to pay attention to the road for less periods of time and not being as mentally exhausted after driving. So yeah, that's our interpretation for criteria one. Criteria two is safety. And so the reason why we're considering this is because driving is considered one of the most dangerous things a person can do. It is one of the leading causes of death of people in America. It is considered, despite how dangerous driving is, Many people consider it inevitable. We all drive. We all constantly have no problem driving ourselves, even to places that we don't know, despite it being that dangerous. And so, if there's a possibility of technology being able to help prevent automobilistic accidents or making driving safer, then that would be very important. You know. And so, some of the data that we found is that essentially autonomous vehicles can help prevent accidents because they have sensors that allow to alert their drivers to immediately brake or loosen brakes for drivers to then brake faster. They can also they're also, when autonomous vehicles are in their autonomous mode, they must follow safety regulations, speed limits, red lights, and so that human factor of people forgetting and accidentally speeding or accidentally crossing a stop sign or accidentally hitting a pedestrian becomes increasingly lower because these cars are obligated and programmed to follow these rules. Unlike a human can ignore rules, but these programs can't. And so the IHSS made a statement saying that it is true that these vehicles do have all these features, but it may not be, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they will act perfect under every single scenario. But it does help. So the interpretation of this data is that vehicles with autonomous features are obligated to follow all regulations and laws, and for the most part they do. The results are basically that there is less human error there's almost close to no human error in an autonomous vehicle when it's driving itself, and it's not a perfect solution, but it's considerable improvement from having a human driver. So a summary of this of what we have analyzed is basically that due to autonomous features, the autonomous vehicle is obligated to follow safety regulations, and it is less stressful for people to drive because they do not need to pay or give it as much mental work. And so both of these are advantages that the autonomous vehicle has over human-driven vehicles. So in conclusion, autonomous vehicles are better in terms of the criteria that we analyze: safety and stress on drivers, and so the use of autonomous vehicles is recommended. So if you'd like to contact me, my name is Manuel Arca. I'm a mechanical engineering undergraduate at the University of Houston. My personal phone number is 832-886-7746. And my email is here, mearca1648676@gmail.com. I tend to respond very quickly and very fast. And so if you would have any questions, comments, or concerns, please feel free to contact me. And here are the references that were used to make this presentation. And thank you very much for your time and for